What is up, Waffle Gang? I do hope you are well. My name is Mark, and today we're checking out some more Nightmare Neighbours. You guys gave me a lot of positive feedback on the last one, so I wanted to follow up with another one because I really enjoyed it as well. So I've just been searching a whole different bunch of subreddits to find different stories from comments and all sorts. So I hope you do enjoy these. Let me know if you do, as always, and let's crack straight on with today's stories. Much love, guys. And we're going to start straight off with Rare Find of the Mind. This was back in 2003, a year before my son was born. My boyfriend at the time and I viewed a really bohemian, cool apartment in a new neighborhood. We saw it in the afternoon and it had this amazing open roof. Not a deck, but a huge reinforced space you could throw some blankets or chairs on or whatever. I noticed that the outdoor area had two other doors accessing it and was told those were the other two apartments. Well, I'm the type that's peaceful and likes to keep to myself, and wasn't sure if I wanted to be that close to other neighbours or worry about getting along in a shared space, etc. But was expressly told by the landlord that the neighbours were older, quiet people and never used the roof. So we took the place. And that was a lie. The other neighbours not only constantly used the roof area, which was bordered by our windows, but sat out all day and night, music blaring, their two kids terrorising the place. Neither worked, so it was all the time. The other neighbour was suffering with mental issues. She had a dog she never took out and let it crap all over the roof whilst letting it marinate in the sun. The two partiers took a liking to us. We were not exactly happy about it and would literally peer in our windows when they knew we'd get home from work and yelled for us to come out and drink with them. There was not an ounce of privacy with these people. Oh, and they had an intact male cat that constantly sprayed in our windows. Fuck. It got progressively worse. Their fights got physical, with screaming and things being broken all hours of the day and night. When they weren't fighting with each other, they were fighting with the other neighbour, culminating in a full-on dog poo flinging fight one night. Their drinking binges were interspersed with crack parties when they could afford it, which meant both their daughters at my door at 6 AM crying because neither parent had been home all night and there was no one to get them ready for school. The stress of living there started getting to us as well. We were at each other's throats several times, nearly broke up. I think the climax came when my mother and grandmother came over to see my new apartment one afternoon, and all of a sudden from outside on the roof we hear the female neighbor scream that the guy was a deadbeat fucking loser, and he turned around and screamed, "Yeah, you gave me a venereal disease, you so-and-so." Too early in the video for YouTube. Followed by the smashing sound of a bottle being thrown at his head and hitting the wall. One night, my partner woke me and said, "I can't do this anymore. We're leaving. You can stay if you want to, but I'm not staying here another minute. Do you understand?" We packed our shit and left. The landlord had our security deposit, so he was covered. We didn't even come back for our furniture. We left, moved to a new neighbourhood, and enlisted our new number. Wow. And our next one is from Better Jazz Hands. Constant fighting that we could hear with our windows closed from the house across the street, letting their two dogs run loose and terrorise the neighbourhood. I couldn't walk my dogs safely anymore because their dogs would come charging us, hosting a drag strip in our front house at 3 PM when the school buses come through, having a raging party with underage kids, the oldest son was 18, getting blackout drunk and peeing on my house. When we moved, I was tempted to throw a party and pee on their house, but I don't have a penis, so it seems less victorious somehow. Get yourself a shiwi. And Air Jordan 45 said, "I lived in a townhouse next to an older lady who was, let's say, batshit crazy. She invited my wife into her house once and there were boxes stacked to the ceiling and anti-abortion newspaper clippings taped all over the walls. That kind of crazy." Anyway, one Saturday afternoon, I was playing my drums in the basement with silencer pads on and tons of stuff crammed into the bass drum. About as quiet as drums can be. After about 10 minutes, I paused and heard a pounding at my door. When I answered the door, she was lying in my garden crying and screaming. She just kept saying, "Boom, boom, boom, why are you doing this to me?" At first I felt bad, but realised there was no way it was that loud, and it was 10 minutes at 3 PM on a Saturday. Deal with it, lady. I got an electronic kit soon after and she complained about that too. So glad I didn't have to deal with her anymore. And our next one's from Ryan in 1985. My wife and I purchased our first house about 3 years ago. While moving in there were my new neighbours drinking on their front porch, no big deal. While bringing the last load of boxes into the house, my neighbour comes up, welcomes me to the neighbourhood, mentions how nice my TV is. Fast forward 1 week, we're heading out to dinner. The neighbour stops me before getting in the car and asks how long we will be gone. Huge red flag. I lie, tell him I'm just running to the gas station 1 block away and we'll be back immediately. 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from the local police. This moron broke into my house in broad daylight with 3 other neighbours watching. Luckily, these neighbours weren't pieces of shit too. He cut his hand on the window he was attempting to climb through, and used his bleeding hand on every doorknob in my house. He is now a number in the US penal system. And can we just say he was caught red-handed? Hey, my dad'd be proud of that one. And Shadow Celery says, my neighbour has no fucking sense of time. One time, we had to talk to him about not using power tools or splitting wood at 3 in the morning. What makes him worse? He gets a smaller trash can to pay less to the city, but then puts all his extra trash in our bin, so ours overfills and we have to pay extra. Fuck, now I'd be putting a stop to that one straight away. And Flossiraptor says, my next door neighbour is lovely in nearly every way. He's friendly, has a cute dog, and he brought us fish and chips for lunch on the day we moved in. He watches our house when we're away and deals with repair people if we're at work, since he's retired. Practically perfect in every way. But his garden is full of wind chimes, like there could be well more than 100. The constant chiming 24/7 makes me want to garrote him. I hear them in my sleep, I hear them at work, I swear they are following me. The chimes never stop. My next door neighbour just recently put a wind chime. She'd redone her front garden and she'd hang the wind chime straight outside her front door, and it was windy that night and I was well pissed off. Because I always have my window open, so maybe it's my fault, but I have the window wide open because I like a cool breeze coming in the evening. But this thing was doing my head in. I was tempted to just go and cut it and throw it, but I didn't do it in the end. I should go around there and just say, look, can you take it inside please, and not be petty about it. And this one is a bit extreme, so you may want to skip over to 9 because it follows with a big story about it. So, and I mean, it's pretty grim too. Sweet Dish says, I've written about my crazy neighbour before. I've since moved. Quick recap. Nutjob, who broke into my room in the middle of the night and stood next to my bed with a power drill as I woke up. She carried a dead dog in a see-through plastic bag, stuck a pencil up said dog's ass to get attention of my handsome friend, and so much more. She is now in jail waiting for trial after attacking the new tenant with a power drill. And then it was pointed out that there was a full story on this one, so I went and found the full story. Again, you may want to skip it, so bear with. So that last one from Sweet Dish, that comment was posted like 11 days ago, and then the story was posted actually 6 years ago. So Sweet Dish says, a few years back I rented an apartment from a friend of mine. He had recently bought it and had it completely renovated. He put it up for sale but couldn't find a buyer, so I offered to rent it in the meantime. After moving in, I realised there was something wrong with the lady next door. She was about 45 but looked much older. She would sit up all night, listen to Christian radio shows and talking loudly to someone. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep, so I went over to her place and asked her to keep it down. She opened her door and I got a quick peek. Her walls all had crosses painted on them in different colours and words like Jesus and angels scribbled everywhere. The windows were painted black, letting no light in at all. It was damp, yellow stained 50-year-old carpets, dog shit and cockroaches everywhere. No dog though. I asked her to please keep it down. She just looked at me and shut the door. Then she turned up the radio even louder. The next night I had my girlfriend staying over. I wake up in the middle of the night and see a shadow of a person next to the bed looking at us sleeping. I think I'm hallucinating, as I usually do in the dark when I'm sleepy, but then the shadow starts talking. It's my neighbour and she's holding something in her hand. She broke in during the night and who knows how long she stood there. You should lock your door at night, she says, and walks out. The next morning I hear someone making strange noises below my bedroom window. It's my neighbour talking to herself in tongue. She has the plastic bag in her hand with her rotten dead dog inside. It's hot as hell outside and I can smell death from the bag. At this point, I'm scared shitless. She's obviously very insane. I go upstairs and knock on another person's door and ask what the hell is going on. The guy is as scared as me. Apparently she broke into his apartment one evening as well while he was watching TV with his kids. He got up from the couch to go and get a snack only to find her behind the couch staring at him holding a power drill. Now I know what was in her hand. At this stage, I'm basically pooping myself. I call the cops and they know all about her. Apparently she is a violent schizophrenic that hasn't taken her meds, but they can't force her or enter her apartment without her permission because she owns it. The only thing they can do is get her when she goes outside. I sit up for the next 2 days waiting for her to run out of cigarettes. When I hear her leave at 2 AM to go across the road to the 7-Eleven, I call the cops. They have 3 cars and a special van over in less than 2 minutes. They restrain her and throw her in the van and drive off to some institution, and in less than a minute, it's like she was never there. I never see her again. Still have nightmares about her looking at me in my sleep. Edit. This blew up. Some are wondering why breaking in was not enough to arrest her. The police said there was no sign of break-in and she didn't steal anything, so not too much going on. And yes, this is probably the craziest thing I've experienced, so naturally I've told this story before. My word, this is something that sounds like it belongs on r/no sleep. Imagine waking up and finding someone staring at you, holding a power drill, holding a dog in a bag as well, man. Crazy stuff. And our next story is from PM Your Bee Syrup. I had this neighbor. She had a little tiny Pomeranian dog that barked at everything, which wasn't too bad actually. The dog wasn't outside much and barking dogs aren't too hard for me to ignore. What really was hard to ignore was this woman yelling, "Nala, no bark," at the top of her lungs every time the dog barked. It drove me and my roommate up the wall. Edit, enough people have asked me if I live in or have lived in Jersey that it necessitates a response. Fortunately I have not. I can only imagine how loud the barking/yelling can be that all of Jersey knows about it. And Back to Back says, he takes firewood from our woodpile at night, or when he knows we're away, for use in his own fireplace. Our neighbour across the street has seen him doing it and has kept us informed. In this summer, he's the tomato bandit, stealing produce from our garden. This summer, I'm going to install a surveillance camera to catch him in the act. And Hay says, the neighbours fucking kids, man. It starts every spring. They only have one speech volume, which is scream. It sounds like children are being murdered on a daily basis. They jump all over my porch swing, even though I've repeatedly asked the parents to tell them not to. They run up and down the stairs of my porch constantly. I'm just waiting for one to get seriously hurt, then it's my fault. I have a narrow driveway, and last summer, the one got his bike wedged between my house and my car's passenger door, scratched the shit out of it. Basically, they just run wild and the parents either don't care or are too drunk to notice at times. I don't know when I turn into a crotchety old man at 30, but damn those kids. No, I don't think you're like a moany old man or anything like that. If someone scratched the hell out of my car with their bike, I'd be fuming too, especially if the parents are doing nothing about it. And Hand Life Throwaway says, I have these stupid college kids that just started renting a house next to me. Every single weekend for 3 months straight, they've been throwing parties. That's not so bad, even though they are super loud and won't shut up until about 3 AM. What makes them the worst is that we live in a court, so whenever the party ends, all these drunk fucktards get in their cars and drive home. Almost every single neighbour, including me, had windows shattered, cars dented, or side panels destroyed because of these assholes. Not a single note left or insurance info exchanged. At least 8 hit and runs in the last 3 months. Fuck these people. Edit, after all these comments I've decided to call the cops next time they throw a party, as I know they are all driving drunk afterwards, and see if the cops will come out. I doubt they will, but it's worth a shot, right? I'm going to invest in some outdoor CCTV cameras. It's going to be a bitch to set up, but like others have stated, it'll be worth it. You can stop flooding my inbox now. And Yakra says, fucking Pam. Pam was a single mum with her teenage daughter, and for the first few years, we more or less got along. Helped her move some furniture in, listened to her bitch about her work, and ignored the smoke that billowed off her adjacent back deck. I don't know what caused it, but Pam started to lose her shit. Everyone was out to get her, myself included, and she loved to call the cops. Once she called the cops because the garbage men put my trash can too close to her driveway after emptying it. Usually it was for watching TV at 9 PM at night, because she thought any noise was a pointed attempt to keep her from sleeping. The craziest was when I was having an argument during the summer, and some windows were open. Pam called the police and told them that I'd been recording an argument that she had with her daughter, and was playing it back on loop to torment her. Pam was nuts. And Yulia says, I grew up in a rough neighbourhood. Rough neighbourhoods are kind of funny, based on what I've heard from other people with similar experiences, that you tend to have a really polarising effect. You have your ghost neighbours, people that never talk to anyone, for all intents and purposes don't exist. You have your neighbours from hell, and you have your awesome neighbours that you keep close to you as possible, because in that kind of setting, you need to. The neighbour on either side of the house I grew up in was pretty good. On the right was a ghost neighbour who eventually started talking to us and being pretty cool, and on the left were my godparents. Across the street was a family of meth addicts. 2 doors down from them, on the corner, was a guy who cooked and sold meth. He had a network of users and sellers all down the street, and damn near one corner house at every section was involved with him. This guy was a fucking icon. People in the area called him a number of things. Tweaker Dan was one nickname, the white guy was another. He had a makeshift auto shop in his garage, and he worked on cars from around 5 AM to about midnight every day, loudly, punctuated by people coming and going from his house to buy meth or shoot the shit or whatever. Sometimes he would have loud arguments with people outside, and sometimes he would have gunfights with people he argued with. More often, when he went for his gun, people left. Dan rode his bike everywhere. He had a car and it worked, but generally just rode his bike all over the place. Now growing up, I just saw him as a shitty neighbour to be feared and avoided. The thing was, Tweaker Dan was actually a pretty friendly guy. He would wave to everyone, neighbours, anyone who lived in the neighbourhood, anyone he recognised really. It wasn't until I was older that I learned a little more about Dan and his operation because of some mutual friends I ended up knowing. Dan didn't just supply meth to the neighbourhood users and sellers. Dan controlled a large amount of the local supply chain. There were 2 major gangs in the area, but our neighbourhood fell directly in a kind of neutral area between their territories. One gang probably could have taken our neighbourhood if they wanted to. They were big enough and powerful enough, but for Dan. Dan was their supplier. They knew him as the white guy, and part of their arrangement with him is that he sold to them, but they stayed the fuck out of the neighbourhood. This was his arrangement with anyone affiliated that he sold to. He would sell to pretty much anyone, but if he dealt with you, you kept your shit out of his neighbourhood. Don't shit where you live sort of thing. Turns out, this is why he also rode his bike everywhere and waved to everyone. Dan was keeping an eye on who came and went. He waved because he wanted you to know that he was watching. It wasn't so much that he was being friendly, though he was, but that he was communicating something very important. He was watching. To those of us that weren't involved with him, we didn't know. We didn't know about his rules, who he said he was allowed to come and go, the arrangements he made that basically kept our neighbourhood from getting worse as the city around us turned to shit. We only knew about his erratic and peculiar behaviour, that he never slept, that he dealt drugs, that he did them. A lot of the clean houses in the neighbourhood vilified him, but it was always peculiar to see which houses were friendly with him, because it was not always who you'd expect. For a guy who had so much interaction with the meth heads, who was also friends with the prison guard, the family who lived a few doors down, my godfather, people you had thought would have avoided him. But they knew. Fuck knows how, but they did. I asked my godfather about it after and I found out he said yeah, he knew. He just didn't see it as something that should be talked about. So that's Tweaker Dan, one of the best and worst neighbours I've ever had. It sounds like he pretty much explained my street that was like growing up. I mean, it was known as we didn't see it as rough when we was growing up, but from the outside, apparently everyone saw our sort of areas like a rough area and a trouble area. And as I said in the last Nightmare Neighbours story, there was always something going on. I mean, the whole street was pretty friendly with each other. I mean, the row of houses that we lived in, all the doors were left open and you wandered in and out of people's houses and everyone was extremely friendly. But we also knew there was drug dealers around the area as well. I mean, the one at the end of our house was a drug dealer. And this dude, you didn't mess with him. I've seen him fight people before. And he had nunchucks. He used to just bring out nunchucks onto the street and used to just like flail him around his head and all this kind of thing. Not that I'm condoning any of his kind of behavior, but this is just what it was, you know. I didn't see it as a negative at the time when I was young. Looking back, you think, fuck me, that was crazy times, right? And I said I'd explain a story that happened to me when I was younger, and I can't remember the ins and outs of it, the total ins and outs of it, but there was a new kid who moved around the area. We must have been about 10, 11 or something like that, and a new guy moved around. We'll call him Joe for the time being. Joe moved in, and he came down and introduced himself and was a nice guy, and he came and played with us and all that kind of thing. But over time, he started to become really entitled and wanting like our footballs and stuff like that, and eventually sort of alienated himself from friends. And I know it's a really hard thing when you're younger, and you know, these things do happen sometimes. And I did feel, so I can remember feeling sorry for him. And I remember this time he came down, and he was still sort of on par with everyone a little bit, and he came down with boxing gloves and he started punching one of our friends, and one of our friends lashed back and tore his boxing glove. And he went upstairs, and suddenly his mum it was like on a masonette, so it's like 2-story like flats, and she was on the balcony, so she was up like really quite high up. I can't like 3 double-deckers maybe high up on this balcony, screaming at us, calling us all little shits and all this kind of thing. You know, it wasn't all of us that did this, but she was screaming at us, calling us little shits and going absolutely mental on the balcony about what we did. And Joe was stood behind her crying his eyes out. I think I felt sorry for him at that time, because I don't know if he was just embarrassed or what. but she went absolutely crazy at us. And then suddenly she got this Hoover. She came over and launched it off the top of this balcony. It just flew over our heads and just smashed to bits behind us. And it was like, whoa, this escalated now. And it was going absolutely crazy. Then a couple of glasses got flung over and were smashing on the floor. And it was madness. It was absolute madness. But then another neighbour, who we're called Don, lived on the lower ground. He came running out and said, oh, he was looking through this Hoover and he found a part of it and he went, oh, I need that bit, and then ran off back into his house. It was just like, the fuck, man, what is going on around here? As I said, I got so many stories. We used to like watch out the window, and I said the police would be around like every couple of days, you know, dealing with something. And it's quite a big area. It was just this row of houses I was in. We weren't that bad, but the whole area, you knew when something was going on. And there was like dealers in the area. There was fights going on all the time. The legend of the Swan Man, the big bearded guy that used to chase us, Mr. Sicko, the time I got chased from the ice rink with a knife. I didn't do nothing in that case. I gotta say, I didn't do anything in that time, but I got chased with a knife. That was scary times. Ran out the fire exit in my ice skates all the way home. My skates were blunt by the time I got home. But anyway, what do you guys think of today's stories? Are you still enjoying the neighbours stories? And if you are, let me know about it, because I love to share. This is all me. I love all this sort of stuff. You guys know me. I'm a nosy bastard. I like to get into people's lives. These little stories like that, I love to read them. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you did enjoy, of course, yeah, let me know. Thank you guys for being here today. I hope you did enjoy today's stories. And if you did, you know what to do. Hit that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too. And if you want to support the channel further, you absolutely can, but never ever any pressure to do so by clicking that join button down below for YouTube, or clicking the link in the description for Patreon and joining up there. Thank you so much for your love, support and time, and I will see you spicy so-and-so in the next one. Take care guys, much love.